Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Calling All Creatures. I am your host, Lori, and tonight we have a pretty interesting podcast. At least I think it's a pretty interesting podcast. I have Robert Echols on with me tonight, and he is an author, and we are going to be talking about his book, For Our Friends the Animals, Cultivating a Reverence for Life. So I'm really glad to have Robert on tonight and have this discussion, and I hope you guys will enjoy it as well. So Robert, thank you, or Bob, whichever you prefer me to call. Thank you so much for being on the podcast tonight. I appreciate it.
No, it's a great thrill to be here, Laura. Yeah, call me Bob. The only person who ever really called me Robert was my mother. And that usually meant that I was in serious trouble and had better skedaddle. So Bob doesn't raise quite so many bad memories.
Now, you know you were in trouble when she said the first and the middle name.
Robert. Yes, ma'am. What is it now?
We always got the middle name. If we got the middle name, we really knew we were in for it.
Oh, so. Then you know. It's like, yeah, okay, it's over. Go ahead.
Yep. And funny story, I was, because of the age and era and stuff that we grew up, my brother, his name was Michael. And so, growing, I always called him Michael. I never called him Mike. It was always Michael for me. And we were at a friend's house at a barbecue or something one night, and I was talking to him, and I had said Michael, and one of his friends looked at me and said, well, he doesn't like to be called Michael, he likes to be called Mike. And I looked at him and I said, well, that's really nice, but you see, I've been calling him Michael his entire life, and since I'm older than he is, I'm pretty sure I can call him Michael.
Absolutely.
My brother was laughing. He was just like, oh my goodness.
No, I always had a friend, and he had an odd name, which was always mispronounced, and it never bothered him because he'd always have this rejoinder, I don't care what you call me as long as you don't call me late for dinner.
Right.
And I thought that's a very good attitude to have. And apparently he hadn't missed too many meals anyway.
That's awesome. All right. Well, we got a little off topic, but anyway, okay, it was fun. Why don't you just go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself? I mean, do you have any kind of a background working with animals, or have you, has it just been your own pets throughout life, or, give us some more info on you.
Yeah, happy to do that, Lori. And then as soon as you get bored, let me know. I am a recovering lawyer, by the way, so I tend to go on and orate quite a bit, but I've learned how to cut that down to meaningful chunks anyway. So I am a retired corporate lawyer. I specialized in corporate compliance and corporate ethics. I got my start in the Army. I was an active duty lawyer serving at West Point, then served as a civilian lawyer for the Army Intelligence Command. I was the ethics officer for the Army spies, among other things. Served in several capacities for ethics and compliance for a bunch of defense contractors, and then ended up as a director of business conduct, director of ethics, if you will, for a company out of St. Louis called Monsanto. Monsanto has subsequently been purchased by the German giant Bayer, or Bayer if you prefer. After I retired from Monsanto, like many retirees, I tried several volunteer activities. Enjoyed them all. One of the volunteer activities was actually working at and with various animal shelters. And it was there, Lori, that I saw the indifference, the cruelty, the lack of humanity meted out, if you will, to these poor animals. And I decided there and then that I would try to do something to alleviate that suffering. So I created a foundation called For Our Friends the Animals. Now, that title is taken from a prayer attributed to Dr. Albert Schweitzer. And right. I funded this foundation, and it provided grants to animal shelters, stipends, helped hire people. And ultimately, I realized that wasn't enough and wasn't going to be enough of a legacy. So with the remaining funds from the foundation, I built 2 animal shelters in Levy County, Florida, one for the county and then one for a small town called Williston, which are both there today. So, yes, to answer, I told you I was a recovering lawyer. A very long-winded answer to your question, but that is my experience really working with animals, seeing our maltreatment of them and wishing to do something about it.
You know, that's a good experience, though. I think if more people actually saw some of the things that animal control officers see and animal shelters see, and then the volunteers and the fosters and stuff like that get these animals and then nurse them back to health, if they saw some of the things that we see, they might actually hopefully think twice about actions. But, you know, sometimes I just have to wonder about the human race, especially after doing 12 years of animal control and seeing some of the things I've seen. So,
no, I understand.
I understand completely.
Yeah, I understand.
So, yeah.
You're absolutely right. I was privileged to work with animal control officers. In fact, in the county I lived in Florida, and then the adjoining county, Levy, was the animal control officer who worked with me to build the first of the 2 animal shelters. And I never went out on any trips with him, but I could see the animals that he brought back and rescued, and then hear the tale of his stories of how the animals were mistreated. Many of them were dogs bred for fighting. And I don't want to get too graphic, so we won't do that. But anyway, you're quite right. I think people need to have a better sense of just what is going on in the animal world, and a visit to any animal shelter will absolutely open your eyes. Oh,
yeah, it will. It will. I mean, volunteering at one and see, you know, that's the kind of the, I guess, more interesting part, because, you know, even when you get your volunteers and stuff in there, they still aren't seeing, I mean, some do, but not all see some of the things that, you know, go on in the animal shelter and things that come in and that have to happen. But yeah, some of them are privy to those kinds of things. You know, the rescue groups and stuff, I think, are quite a bit more because of the fact that, you know, they get contacted by these smaller shelters that don't have the veterinarians and the capacity to get the medical care for some of these animals. And, you know, and then, of course, so they take those on and see that stuff. But then, of course, you know, you got to stop and think about some of the animal cruelty cases that animal control officers get in. And, yeah, sometimes people don't understand how bad that can get. I mean, I just get too indifferent or turn a blind eye or don't want to acknowledge it. You know, because they don't want to acknowledge that there's something that bad going on, I guess you might say.
No, I think that's exactly right. I mean, the county in Florida where I'm sounding very pompous here, and I apologize, where my foundation, let's say, it contributed to the construction of the 2 shelters, was really a very poor county and a very rural county. So a lot of negligence, I would call it, of animals went on. People just had too many horses, didn't feed them, too many dogs, didn't feed them, grew elderly and demented and could not take care, and so forth and so on. That is perhaps more forgivable than the absolute wanton cruelty that was deliberately imposed by people who knew what they were doing and knew better. Exactly. And because of a desire for entertainment, for gambling, for selling and making money from the proceeds, whatever the case may be, Lori, inflicted truly grievous bodily harm on God's creatures. And that truly is unforgivable. But I agree with you. I think too many of us have turned a blind eye to how we treat animals across the spectrum. in our country. We just are willingly indifferent. And yeah, I know we all have our problems and our issues that we have to grapple with, but if we don't start getting a handle on how we treat animals, then I think we're never going to get a handle on how we treat the rest of nature, the rest of God's creatures, and how we treat ourselves.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I was just going to say, oh my gosh, now my thought just went right out of my brain there that I was going to say. It was something you said kind of triggered that what I was thinking about. The negligence. Yes, because I'm here in Arizona, and we actually have quite a few areas here in Arizona where we have poor areas. The county I am in is not one of. We're actually one of the larger counties in our state, but we're also more rural, and we don't have the funds and the monies and stuff in our county as much, say, as like Pima County or Maricopa County, where Phoenix and Tucson and stuff are at. And then, of course, we have the Indian reservations. Oh, let's not even get started with that, because on the Indian reservations, the conditions of a lot of the dogs and the animals and stuff on the reservations, unfortunately, are quite horrible. And we have a group here that's really working hard to try to help out some of the Indian reservations and nations with taking care of their animals, getting the vet care in there to them, getting dog houses, helping to get them, spayed, neutered, and things like that, because like you said, the negligence, and it's just a matter of maybe not having the funds to do some of that stuff, or the education, because when I did animal control, sometimes, not all the time, but a bit of the time, we'd find out it was more about an educational aspect than it was that they were intentionally, doing something. Like sometimes you'd come across a dog, say, that was really, really skinny, and we'd be talking with the owners, and I'm sorry, I don't want to bash anybody, so I'm not going to say any dog food brand names, but there's just certain dog food brands out there that are not very good. And they unfortunately would be feeding that brand of dog food, and here their dog isn't gaining any weight, and it looks like it's just skin and bones, but it was just a matter of giving them a little education. And once they found out about that and they switched that dog food, their dog started putting on weight, and it looked great after we were able to get that education to them. So it kind of depends, like you said. You've got your people that knowingly inflict the cruelty, but then you've got your other ones that is just more like they need a little extra help or education. And I can probably guarantee you the place where you built those 2 shelters, I'm sure we're so grateful to be able to get that and have a place for the animals and stuff to go. I'm sure they were very grateful for that.
Oh, of course, and their gratitude paled, and frankly, in the face of mine, being grateful for the ability to bring this to people and animals. The one place I remember we also made it as much as you can hurricane-proof, since this was a county on the Gulf Coast of Florida, such that people could bring their animals there during a hurricane, and there would be facilities where the animals could be kept and kept safe.
Oh,
so
that's great.
I agree with you about education, and that may be something we want to talk about later, because that's one of the things that I'm trying to do. I think education regarding our relationship, and from my perspective, Lori, our obligations towards God's creatures is woefully inept in this country. In fact, woefully inept around the world. There's no point in singling out the U.S. There isn't any country that does it well or thoroughly enough. And that's something that I'm hoping to, I won't eradicate it, but if I can put a dent in it with my work, then I can die happy, let's put it that way.
Yeah, yep. And the sad part is, we were talking about kind of turning a blind eye. Well, we do that all the time, too, with our government, because, we have our government that's testing on animals and doing the research and stuff. The cosmetic companies and stuff like that are finally starting to, I think, come around and they're finally starting to stop the animal. I mean, they've tested for so long and everything. They already have so many things they can use, but on top of that, dogs' physiology is not the same as a human being's. I don't even understand how you think that you can test on a dog or something like that, or a rat, and think that it's going to work the same on a human being. That just doesn't work that way. But we turn a blind eye to all this kind of stuff that all these different governments in these countries and stuff are doing. I mean, we've got the animal testing in Australia. You've got the government like basically putting contracts out on the kangaroos and having hundreds of thousands of them killed every year and slaughtered. You got the meat trade over in China. I mean, it's crazy. And I think there's getting some strides made on that one there, though, too. Some of the meat trade in China, I think they're starting to make some strides with ending that. But it's just crazy, some of the things that we don't consider. I mean, this is all cruelty to animals. It's not, but we just look the other way.
Yeah, well, of course, it depends on one's culture and how one has been raised as well. So, for instance, I post a lot on LinkedIn, and I just put a post there a couple of days ago. The New York Times, for the second time in about 8 months, ran an op-ed to the effect of how come we humans cosset dogs and slaughter pigs? The answer is because it pleases us to do so. We have given a set of rights to dogs. We have not given that same set of rights to pigs. But as you say, if you go into other parts of the world, those same rights are not even accorded to dogs or cats, for heaven's sake.
Right.
And the problem with reliance on human bestowed rights is that they can be abridged, annulled, abrogated, delayed, debated, misinterpreted, or attributed to dogs but not pigs, or dogs but not cattle, or dogs but not horses, or not dogs at all. So the point I try to make is until our culture evolves, and I hope it will, into a culture that sees all God's creatures as having an innate right to exist, then you're always going to get these dichotomies between treatment of various species depending on which people are doing it and how it pleases them. And then throw in again amusement and gluttony and cupidity, greed that we can make from sales and all sorts of other animal activities. All of those impede on rights for animals as well. So really, to me, Lori, it boils down to if we are going to make those strides that we talked about, then humans as one species of animal, albeit a brilliant species when contrasted with most, and certainly a species that has been given either by God and or by evolution a whole lot of advantages over everybody else. From that, I see an obligation on our part to imbue all God's creatures with the right to be here. And if we can get to that culture, and that's quite a change, I'll grant you, things will start to change in the treatment of animals, in the treatment of nature, the types of testing, the slaughterhouses, all these types of things will be assessed and probably, we hope, stopped. So we have a ways to go, but I agree with you. I think certain strides have been made. I will tell you, Lori, from my both experience and perspective, we have a long way to go.
Yes, we do. We sure do. Oh, my goodness. Well, let's talk a little bit about your book. I think we've kind of discussed a little bit about why what made you decide to write the book. Trying to get people to think about, the way we coexist with our animals and how we treat them and stuff like that. I also want to touch, you had mentioned Dr. Albert Schweitzer a little bit ago, Now, you actually do mention him several times throughout your book, and about some of the things that he's written. So why was he such an inspiration to you, it seems like, for this book?
Yeah, he most surely was. So, like most people, Lori, I kind of had an inkling of who he was, and that inkling said, oh, he's a really good person. But if you ask me, okay, Bob, why was he a good person? I don't think I could have explained it to you. I didn't have the definite knowledge of Albert Schweitzer's amazing life. But several years ago, I read an article, excuse me, Lori, in one of the better-known magazines, and it was all about Albert Schweitzer and his ethos, his philosophy of a reverence for life. And so I started to read books, biographies, autobiographies, everything I could about him, because I was fascinated by this man. And if I could just tell you and your audience just a little bit about him, because that's kind of the lead into why I wanted to write this book, which is the first of four. So Schweitzer, and I hope I get all this right, he was a philosopher, a physician, a musician, a theologian, an author, a builder. He was an organist. By the time he was 30, he had 2 earned doctorates. He had written books that are still read today on Jesus, St. Paul, Goethe. He's still acclaimed as one of the great interpreters of the music of Johann Sebastian Bach. A great organist, organ player, and a great repairer of organs. And he did all that, Lori, by the time he was 30. And at age 30, he had, I guess not a midlife crisis, but a midlife calling. And he decided that he would chuck all that. Obviously, you keep your experiences and your education. And he enrolled in medical school, obtained a medical degree, obtained his medical license, and then applied for and was accepted as a director and medical director of a small mission hospital up in the jungles of a country then known as French Equatorial Africa, now the country of Gabon, or Gabon if you're a French speaker. And reading, and people ask him, well, why? And why would you throw away this brilliant academic career, this brilliant career as an author? And he said, because I want to make my life my argument. And his argument was, we must have a reverence for life, the belief that all life has worth and value, and that our calling as humans is to be stewards of all life, of all God's creatures. And he said he wanted, by his actions, to demonstrate that philosophy through the way he lived his life. And I was so taken by the selflessness of that kind of a man, to go and dedicate himself to the service of others who truly needed it, that I said, I want to try and emulate this, obviously very badly and very poorly by comparison, but I do the best I can. I want to try and emulate this in my life. And so I thought, well, what is something that I can do to keep the spirit of Albert Schweitzer with us, to keep the spirit of a reverence for life alive? And it came to me, why don't you write this book and get it out there such that there's always at least some document that you can point to that talks about a reverence for life, and then also could be a tool for people to come to understand that philosophy and, with any luck, adopt it as their own. So a long-winded way of bringing you from the genius, the greatness of Albert Schweitzer to his effect on me to want to write the particular book that you've mentioned.
He has a lot of good points about a lot of different things, so I can understand. I mean, I have, I have heard of him and heard about different things of him and stuff, but I didn't know some with the music and stuff like that. That was pretty interesting. But so yeah, I just thought it was very interesting as I was reading the book that you had, brought him. You just knew that as much as you had mentioned him, that he was a pretty good inspiration for you. So
it's just an amazing man. Again, the selflessness and the dedication to service and stewardship that he showed, not just to people but to all animals, really was. It really was mind-blowing to me that there could be a person like that who would have really two careers already, as a theologian and an academician and a writer. I guess he had several careers, and then say, no, I want to serve. If I am going to espouse this theory of a reverence for life, let me put it into practice. And that was an eye-opener, and I think a real motivator for me.
Yeah. And I guess that's what it takes, is to have something or someone that's a motivator to kind of get you to that spot, I guess you might say.
Oh, absolutely. I think you do. Let's face it. We're talking about, and I was talking about earlier, a cultural shift, if you will, in people's philosophy. That takes time. There's no magic wand, unfortunately, that can be waved that is going to make people change from cruelty and indifference, let's say, to care and compassion and a loving involvement. You have to be exposed to it. You have to think about it. You have to talk about it. But I thought if I could get a document, a tool, let's call it a tool out there that people could read, and it would start the process of thinking and evolving to the level of adopting a reverence for life, then that would be something useful, and that would be something that could get the conversation started anyway. Right.
So another thing I kind of wanted to touch on, in your book too, Bob, was you also had wrote in there about St. Paul, and that St. Paul had wrote that we should be mindful of all suffering and expand our understanding into an act of empathy and sympathy. We should relieve suffering whenever possible and never cause pain unless there's no other choice. I think that kind of also falls into, where we're not being so mindful, and then, that he says that we should be. So for you, why do you think that's such an important reference when it comes to our relationships with animals? I think it's kind of important because, if you can sit back and you can look at the way we are with animals, and I know we do have some people that are mindful, but then we have others that aren't.
Yeah, I think, and I can't recall whether St. Paul said this, but obviously it's a truism. To live is to suffer. And one of the things that Schweitzer said, and I hope I quoted him in the book, if not, I'll certainly paraphrase him now, is that a part of reverence for life is the acceptance by mankind of a duty to alleviate suffering wherever encountered. And here's one example of Schweitzer's own life again, then at that time, French Equatorial Africa. Of course, that was in the middle of the jungle on a major river. Uh-huh. And there were pelicans in the river. And one day, Dr. Schweitzer came across a wounded pelican. Not sure what happened, but his wings had been broken. So Dr. Schweitzer tended to him, worked on him, and finally was able to not only relieve the suffering, but bring the pelican back to some sense of normalcy. He named the pelican Parsifal, of course, after the character in the Wagner opera. But the pelican repaid him by, after he had been cured and properly treated, the pelican stood guard every night outside Dr. Schweitzer's sleeping quarters, making sure the doctor was safe. But here's the point. some of Schweitzer's staff and human patients critiqued him in a way, at least chided him for, why are you working on an animal? You're a human doctor. You're supposed to be working on us. And again, Schweitzer's reply was, I have an obligation to alleviate suffering in all God's creatures wherever I find it, and that's what I'm going to do. And every one of us, Lori, everyone listening to this, all of us suffer, sometimes daily. And to the extent that we can act to alleviate, to relieve suffering, excuse me, Lori, Schweitzer thought that was an absolute duty and obligation on our part, and I agree. And again, as you know from your experience, all you have to do is take a walk through any animal shelter, any animal hospital, any facility run by a rescue group. You will see lots of suffering being tended to.
Yep.
This is what we do. No one should sugarcoat life. Some people obviously have it less difficult or lead a less onerous life than others, but all of us are going to have difficulties, problems, pain, suffering, diseases, and there's no escape from that. So rather than, again, be indifferent, turn the blind eye, say, well, better you than me, a reverence for life calls upon us to affirm life, not to ignore it, not to turn away from it, but to be involved in it. And if you're going to be involved in life, then obviously you're going to be involved in suffering. And our goal, again, our job, our duty, our commission, whatever you want to call it, is, among other things, let us alleviate suffering while we can.
Yes, I agree. And yes, the rescues in them, they do see a lot of it. In fact, there's one here, she actually takes in like the livestock, the horses and stuff like that, and helps them out. And she's had a couple here just recently that have not been in real good shape. So, yes, exactly. It's a good point to make. Yeah. So, what do you think men, or people, I should say, what people need to overcome in order to demonstrate compassion and affirmatively seek ways to reduce suffering and enhance the lives of all creatures?
Yeah, well, you mentioned men, and that's kind of a sore point with me, because let's face it, we men, the Y chromosome bearers, I would guess, I don't even guess, I know statistically, we are the inflictors of more harm and suffering on animals than women, far and away. And we are more indifferent to it, I think, than women are. What does it take to overcome that? I'll kind of give you my thoughts, and then actually I'll read you a little bit from the book, if I may.
Oh, yes.
But I think the problem is, if for a man in our culture, and I don't think it's different in too many cultures, to be compassionate, to show care, to help, somehow that's weakness, bordering on being effeminate. Men don't do that. We slaughter and kill and hunt. we don't treat and help and save. And I think that's unfortunate, and in a way it stems, and this is my own philosophy, but I think it's borne out. I think all of us want to lead a life that is creative, that has purpose, that adds value. We all want to do something and leave something behind. And unfortunately for many of us, let's face it, we're not Beethoven. We're not going to leave the Ninth Symphony behind. It's not going to happen. So too many, I think, men grow frustrated at the inability to create something and take it out, if you will, with the infliction of harm, with killing. At least I get a sense of purpose and value if I can destroy or kill or inflict harm. What we don't realize, and then I'll get very quickly to to the quote from the book. But what we need to realize is if we can help another person, another animal, another one of God's creatures, that's the most creation, the most creative you can ever be, because you've placed a person, an animal, one of God's creatures on a different trajectory in life than would have been the case had you not intervened. And it's hard to see anything more creative than that. You've changed another life, and for the good. In fact, I just came across this quote from Schweitzer. Let me read it, and then I'll go back to the other one. This is very apt. This is from a book by Schweitzer. The interior joy we feel when we have done a good deed, when we feel we have been needed somewhere and have lent a helping hand, is the nourishment the soul requires. Well, thank you, Albert Schweitzer, for opening the book to that page. That was very handy. Let me just quote you this about men. So again, this is actually from the portion of the book that I call the sermon, and like most good sermons, it's very short. For men in particular, let us overcome the tendency to believe that manliness is only shown by acts of destruction, killing, maiming, and torture. On the contrary, let us see manliness and strength as reflected in and demonstrated by acts of gentleness and compassion, as Jesus did. And here again, this is good. I'm actually quoting myself here. They would come to believe and understand that acts of compassion are actually creative in nature, as they set the recipient of such acts on a better and perhaps new path in life. Hey, that's good.
It is like good. That is actually really good.
So, I mean, for men, again, it's a cultural thing. We need to grow up and evolve a culture that says, in order to be manly, you do not have to inflict grievous bodily harm, much less kill something. In order to be manly, you can use your strength to help that recipient of your strength and your caring turn over a new leaf, become a new person, do something different. And that's a legacy worth leaving behind, I think.
I think so, too, and I agree with that, because I actually think that if you can show the more compassionate side and help something out or take care of something and be gentle with it, I think that's so much better than the opposite. I mean, do women want strong men? Yes, but again, you don't want someone that's out there and like, ooh, kill, maim, burn, smash everything that we come across. You know, no, that's just not the way it is anymore. But like you said,
no. Go ahead, Lori.
Oh, I was going to say, but like you said, you know, it's the culture and the way we've been raised, and it's really hard for people to change and make those changes.
It's very hard, and when you make those changes, of course, you're going to be mocked and jeered, as Jesus was. And that's unfortunately going to have to be a part of those who are in the vanguard of making those cultural changes. But for me, it requires a lot more strength of character to actually be involved in helping someone or some animal lead a new life, get on that new trajectory, because you have to be involved and you have to stay with it and you've got to be committed to it. It's not all that difficult to pull the trigger and unload a high-powered round into somebody. That doesn't require a whole lot of effort, I know, but it requires a great deal of effort to stand by somebody, stand by an animal and say, I am going to work with you and we're going to find a solution to this and we're going to help you make yourself better. That to me is great strength. That's the strength that Jesus had. Quite frankly, that's the strength that Albert Schweitzer had. And one of the reasons that I am so impressed by that man.
Yeah. Yep, and like I said, you know, good point to make, and you're completely right. It does take more strength to help the creature or the person and not, you know, hurt it. So, a couple other things that you had talked about in your book were bringing our affection for all life to bear on all life that we encounter. And I wanted to ask, how do we, I'm not sure if I'm going to say this right, reify our love?
I like that. That's a great word.
There were a couple things in your book that you talked about in regards to that.
It's, well, it requires, first of all, a commitment. So you have to want to do it. Like any change in anyone, first of all, Lori, we have to say, I'm going to do it. And then you have to actually be involved in those acts. So a reverence for life, and Schweitzer is quite adamant about this, is not just the avoidance of harm. A reverence for life is affirming life and being involved over and over and over again. So in order to, I like reify, in order to reify a reverence for life such that it becomes your ethos, your mindset, again, first you make the decision, yes, I'm going to do this, but then you have to act on it again and again and again and again until it becomes habitual, until it becomes second nature, until it becomes who you are. And it's, in a way, it's sort of like working out or going to the gym or something like that. I want to lose weight, I want to build up my musculature, whatever the case may be. First you have to say, that's what I want to do and I'm going to do it. But then, rather obviously, if you don't show up at the rec center or the gym, the weight's not going to come off and the muscles are not going to grow. So you have to do it again and again and again and again until it does become simply a part of you, and you don't even have to think about it anymore. You just do it.
Right. Practice makes perfect, right?
It does make perfect. It certainly brings you closer to your goal. Again, you know, for planning purposes, yes, you have to have your vision and your mission, and I forgot the rest of them, objectives and strategy and tactics. There we go. I can't believe I remembered all that. But you've got to go from vision and mission to strategy and tactics. Tactics is actually where you get it done. So, yes, it's great to say, oh, I want to do this, I want to change the world, I want to spread love throughout Alabama or Arizona. Wonderful, good for you. Start doing it, and that's the tactical part. And that's what Schweitzer would say, get involved in life, affirm the value of life, revere life, a reverence for life, obviously. And the more you do it, the better you will be. But his point would be not only the better you will be, you'll become that person. You will become someone who reveres life, and that will kind of shine forth to your relationships, and other people will start to draw that energy from you.
Yeah, that's something that, you know, people need to stop and think about, you know, and like you said, if you want to do that, it's something that, you know, you do got to commit to doing and keep doing over and over again. You can't just do it, you know, once or twice or when it suits your needs. It's all the time.
It's all the time. What I tried to do in the book, Lori, was frankly the book is kind of two parts. The first part attempts to provide a spiritual basis for a reverence for life, because, as Schweitzer says in his books, he actually gives us many different definitions of a reverence for life. I think one of the better ones is a reverence for life is simply the love espoused by Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, made universal, made global, bestowed upon all God's creatures, not just a few favored homonyms there. So Part one is to attempt to convince the reader that, yes, there is a spiritual underpinning for bestowing the love of Jesus on all creatures. Part two is some practical tools, as we were just talking about, to start doing that, actually to start the application of a reverence for life, and start to transition your own personhood, if you will, from someone who is indifferent or maybe even cruel to someone who is caring and compassionate and involved.
Yep. And it's funny, because you mentioned, Schweitzer and loving God's creatures, because that was the next thing I was going to talk with you about. Is one of the quotes was, Schweitzer says that to love God is to love God's creatures, and no one who claims to love God could turn a blind eye to any suffering. So, do you think that is a true statement, that those who claim to love God would not turn a blind eye to an animal's suffering, or do you think it still happens? I mean, even though...
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think the answer is obvious. Many of us say that we love God. Many of us say we love Jesus. We go to church on Sunday or whenever, and then we turn around and commit acts that really, from my perspective, are an atrocity. But again, you go to the cultural aspects of it. Much of culture has, if you will, sort of elevated Homo sapiens, elevated humanity on the very top of the ladder of worth and value and of existence. And every other of God's creatures is well down the ladder. And from that elevation, if you will, we've derived the theory that, all right, well, since you're so way down on the ladder, you obviously have less worth than I. And since you have less worth, I can exploit you, I can harm you, I can slaughter you, I can torture you, I can eat you, I can hunt you, I can ride you to death, and the beat goes on. I think if you really love God, then you must love all of God's creation, and that's life. This is an astonishing, I don't even know what to call it, entity. That we have life here is just a wonder. And we should be, as Schweitzer says, the German, by the way, for reverence, reverence, it really doesn't translate the German. The German word is Ehrfurcht. And that's from German loves to combine words. So the air part is Ehren, to honor. The Furcht is from Furchten, to fear. So really, for Schweitzer, it was an honoring and a fear of life because it was created by God. Something we don't translate all that well into reverence, but that's the best we can do. I think if you love God, you love life. And if you love life, you love all life. Now, let's face it, Laura, you know from living and certainly from your time as a animal warden, life is rather imperfect.
Oh, yeah.
There is a prey-predator relationship. Bad things do happen in this world. So we have to see ourselves as, yes, loving life, but realizing that there will be bad things. Our role as humans is not to contribute to those bad things, rather to accept their existence and using our intelligence and our ethics and our love of God, our spirit, to do our best to bring an ethical world to the remainder of this planet. One of the things that Schweitzer derived from St. Paul was the notion that our task as humans is to help Jesus as Messiah to usher in the kingdom of God. And we do that. Obviously, God will usher in the kingdom whenever God wants. But we can assist Jesus by those acts of love, those acts of mercy, those acts of revering life, those acts of bringing an ethical sense to this world. That's loving God. That's helping Jesus usher in the kingdom of God. How are we doing in that regard? Not very well, to be honest. I think most people focus not on a combined collective altruism. Let's work together to help usher in the kingdom by our good works. Most people, I think, focus on themselves. Well, it's all about me, and what do I need to do individually? And that, I think, again, you see the lawyer in me orating a little much, so I'll wrap this up. But that, I think, unfortunately, is endemic in us in terms of, we say we love God, but only as that benefits us individually, not as it would benefit God's creation collectively. That's the problem.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I really hope that people read your books and understand what your message is in these books that you're trying to get across. And, maybe you'll be able to affect some changes, like you said, even if they're small ones here and there. It's always baby steps, right?
Yeah, it's definitely baby steps. I mean, this is like, I liken it to like a relay race. And unfortunately, it's a relay race that's turning into a marathon. But
right.
I've got the baton, at least for this lap anyway, and I want to be able to pass it to younger, fitter people who can take my ideas and my books, put them into practice, put them in even, I hope, better language than I've employed so far, and find ways to get this message out there. Schweitzer, while he lived, he died, by the way, 60 years ago. While he lived, he was, and maybe he lived in a fool's paradise, I don't know, but he truly believed that a reverence for life was gaining traction and taking hold. And I think we can say in the intervening 60 years since the great man died that quite the opposite is the case. It's not gained any traction. If anything, it's now kind of gathering dust in a library somewhere. My hope, Lori, was to dust it off, bring it out to people, put it in language that I understood. Schweitzer, I'm glad I've studied German, but there's no way I could work through his German. He wrote like most German philosophers, and even then he swore that he was trying to write for the common folk like me. But you really need to take some of his thoughts and put them into language and put them into opportunities that are more, I won't say relevant, but perhaps resonate more today. That's my hope. But, I mean, obviously, if this is going to be a success, then lots of your listeners, I hope and pray, will pick up the baton, pick up a reverence for life, share it, and, of course, the main thing is live it.
Yes, exactly. And this is not, you mentioned earlier, this isn't the only book you have. You said there's 4 of these, correct?
Well, this is volume 1. I'm going to be writing 4 volumes.
Okay.
And what I'm doing is they're all going to be for our friends, the animals. At least that's the current plan. Mm-hmm. They're going to take readers through what I see as the stages of actually inculcating, or like your term, reifying, a reverence for life in everyone's life. So first is cultivating it. I'm trying to raise awareness, whet your appetite, get you interested. Book 2, which is written, it probably needs just a bit of polishing. And hint, hint for the listeners out there, I am looking for a publisher. But book 2 will be actually applying a reverence for life to some of the more common issues that we see with human-animal relationships. Book 3 will be then, okay, I've cultivated, or actually you've cultivated in yourself, you've started to apply it. Now I want you to start proclaiming it. Talk to other people. Let's get this message out there. And then as a part of cultivating it, applying it, proclaiming it, as we spoke before, if you do it again and again and again, it will become habitual to the point where you actually just live it. And that's book 4, Living a Reverence for Life. So if I can get all those books out there, then I truly will have accomplished my mission and can go on and find some other way to help Albert Schweitzer get his word out.
There you go. Do you have a website where people can go and get more information or take a look at your books or purchase it, or are they just available on like Amazon? Where can people get your book at?
Yeah, so the book is available at all fine e-tailers, and you can get it on Amazon. I'm sure Barnes & Noble, I believe Thrift Books. I actually saw Target, for heaven's sakes, advertising the book. You can get it in paperback form, or what do they call those, e-readers, Kindle, and that sort of stuff. So it's on Amazon for our friends the animals. Or if you just type in Robert Echols, it'll probably pull up for our friends the animals. I do encourage readers and your listeners to check it out. It is aggressively priced. It's got very nice reviews. The reviews that please me the most are the ones who say it's an easy read and it's changed their perspective. That pleases me greatly because that was my goal. In terms of a website, I don't, but I do post almost every day on LinkedIn. And if you type in Robert Echols for our friends the animals on LinkedIn, I should come up, and you can take a look at some of the shorter posts that I put out there about a reverence for life and Jesus and living his message and trying to be a little bit more merciful and kinder towards our animal friends.
Awesome. Well, that's good information to know. And guys, go out and get Bob's book and give it a read. It was a really good read. I enjoyed reading it. It does make you think about different things and obviously brings up some good questions and discussions that you can have with other people. So definitely go out and see about getting Bob's book. Don't forget, it's called For Our Friends the Animals, Cultivating a Reverence for Life. So, Bob, I appreciate you being on the podcast tonight. I'm going to go ahead and announce my next upcoming podcast, and you're welcome to stay on for that, or you're welcome to jump off. I know it's getting late at your time where you live, so I'm sure you probably have other things you need to go take care of. But it was really nice talking with you and discussing your book and some of the really good points that you made in it.
I appreciate that, Lori. It was a great pleasure talking with you. Truly hope that your listeners enjoyed our conversation. I hope I didn't orate too much. I assure you the language in the book is very readable and very approachable.
Yes.
And with your permission, I'm going to go walk my mini poodle before she starts banging on the door here, saying, Dad, it's time.
Yeah, I understand. Believe me, I think any of our listeners would be fine with that. Everybody, this is an animal podcast. If you can't understand animals and dogs, and I don't know what to tell you. So, all right,
that's great. Well, God bless you, Lori, and God bless all your listeners.
And you too, Bob. And have a great night and enjoy walking your poodle.
I always do. Bye, everybody.
Bye. All right, everybody. Well, what a great podcast tonight, and what a great discussion we had about Bob's book and some of the points he made in it, and talking about Dr. Albert Schweitzer. I hope you all enjoyed that. I did. It was really good. Like Bob said, he's had people say it is an easy read. It was an easy read. It's really not that long of a book either. It's, I don't even think 200 pages. No, it's not even 200 pages. It's barely over, not even really 100 pages, just over 100 pages. So, a very easy read. Go out and take a look at it, guys, and see what Bob's got to say in it. Yeah, I think you'll like it. So, the next upcoming podcast I have on May 15th, I am going to be talking about coyotes. This podcast is Under the Desert Move, Coyote Journeys. I'm hoping I'll be talking about coyotes, I should say. Having a little bit of a snafu with a guest, but anyway, that'll be okay. I'm going to try to talk about coyotes, but anyway, that podcast will be Under the Desert Mood, Coyote Journeys. That one hopefully we'll be talking about, coyotes and kind of the urban, life that they've had to adapt with people moving into the areas and the habitats and stuff where they live. And how they've adapted to now living with us in our cities and towns and stuff like that. Some of the myths and misconceptions that people may have about coyotes and how they behave. And I mean, it's not like they're out there actually trying to hunt your little dogs and stuff when you're out walking. There's usually a reason why a coyote might come up after you when you're out walking with your dog and stuff like that. So anyway, but hopefully we'll be able to talk about coyotes on the 15th and explore in more detail about that kind of stuff and, living with the coyote in our urban settings. So that should be May 15th. And then on May 29th, I am going to have John Reeder on with me. He is the Bubble Man. Maybe you guys have heard of John. He makes bubbles that are safe for dogs. And that way you can blow bubbles for your dogs. And your dogs can enjoy them without having any, kind of poisoning or toxicity that they might encounter with the bubbles that we usually have for humans. So I think that'll be a really good podcast, learning more about bubbles and stuff like that and how John got started with his bubble business for dogs. So, well, that's the next couple podcasts coming up. So, like I said, we'll hopefully be talking about coyotes on the 15th. And then on the 29th, be talking with John Reeder, our Bubble Man. I hope you guys will be able to come back and listen in to those podcasts. I think they're going to be really good. I really do think we need to get some more information out about coyotes. So, hopefully, we'll be able to have that podcast. With that being said, I hope you all have a great weekend. Stay safe out there and try not to get into too much trouble. And don't forget, come on back in a couple weeks for the next podcast. All right, good night, everybody.